afternoon, and welcome to this week's episode of What If You Could. Brian Searcy, your host, and I'm extremely excited today to have Camee Ponder, the Director of Education for Texas Title University. They've got 7 different offices across the Metroplex. I've been to one of them in Fort Worth. But just to remind everybody, what if you could today? That's what we're going to talk about with Camee, is we learn about her, we learn about Texas Title University and Texas Title. But what if you could started with Main Street Pilot, trying to solve the divisiveness in our country today. So we started out by just asking ourselves, what if you could? And then that turned into the development of content, that turned into programs, that turned into figuring out how to solve the 6 barriers to teach personal skills and how to allow people the opportunity to learn how to make decisions again that are honorable and respectful. So that's how it all got started. So, but Camee, welcome today to the show.
Thank you very much.
So let's start off by you telling us a little bit about Camee.
Let's see. I was born in New Mexico and worked for my grandma in Albuquerque. She owned a Remax. So that's kind of how I got my first taste of real estate. I was her assistant. She was very successful. And it's also where I learned the value of education in real estate. So at that time, Remax was really the standard for traditional brokerage. And so it wasn't so much, you didn't go there to learn, you just went there to do your business. And she, being a Southern lady, she was the broker that always was out of her office, always helping people, answering their questions. So that's kind of where I learned the importance of education in real estate. So after I graduated high school, I went to Texas Tech and got
Red Raider.
Yes, guns up, and got a business degree. And I was not going to do anything in real estate, right?
Gotcha.
So my first job out of college was in the human resource department at the Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona. And so
that had to be pretty exciting, though.
It was. That was a cool experience, especially when you do ever go to Lubbock, you'll understand the importance of how much different that was. So I worked there for a while and decided that it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. It wasn't my passion. And so I decided that I'd go back to school. So I moved back to Lubbock, which was also another change. And I ended up not going back to school. I ended up getting my real estate license.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of where that started. So, and then just through course of career, I've transitioned to Fort Worth.
But then when you were in Lubbock, then that first job in real estate, that's kind of where you got your start in education as well. Tell us a little bit about that. You built a program for like 100 realtors or something like that?
That was the second part.
Okay, gotcha.
So the first part, I sold real estate as an agent for 6 years.
Okay.
And I had one of those just phenomenal leaders that just really poured into us the importance of going to leadership trainings. She gave us books. We had mastermind with her every Friday, which that's a huge treat for an agent to get that much quality time with their team leader. So she really just developed us. And it's funny, out of that mastermind group that she created, every single one of us went into leadership in some sort of fashion in Keller Williams, outside of Keller Williams. So after selling real estate for a while and being part of the leadership, they have an agent leadership council. So you really, when you get on that platform, you're kind of exposed to more Keller Williams outside of your market center. And the Fort Worth office was looking for what's called a productivity coach. So you take a brand new agent and you put them through a course in programming and coaching with you till they reach a certain amount of production. And then they graduate and they're on their own, essentially. And so they were looking for that role, and they reached out to me and through interviewing process. And I mean, you have to do that. I mean, it's hard. You have to take personality tests to make sure that you're the right person for that seat on the bus. And so after I did that, I moved to Fort Worth, took the job, and that's where I helped. We helped 100 agents in 2 years.
Gotcha.
So.
It's interesting that you bring up having to take personality tests. That's one of the things that we always do with our programs after a certain age. Now, we don't give it to 4th graders.
Correct. Yeah.
But after a certain age, we start to do that because it's important with how you're going to communicate with who your end user is, who the client is.
Yeah.
And we're also finding that those personality tests are potentially going more and more to introverts because more and more people are spending less time communicating with each other. May not truly be that they're an introvert, but they're at least self-identifying as an introvert. So it's very, very interesting, and it's driving a lot of dynamics on how he communicates. That was just very interesting that you brought that up. So you came to Fort Worth, and tell me about how you got to Texas Title.
So our current president right now was an owner of another title company at the time. and he was looking to kind of disrupt the market. Title companies are regulated by the state, so we can't change our fees. We can't encourage people to come through financial gains. And so you always have the customer service aspect. But I can tell you we have great customer service, and then Bob down the street can tell you that they have great customer service. So we really had to figure out a way to stand out. How could we really truly serve the real estate community? And so with talking with Chris over the course of 6 months, we came up with the idea of having an education platform. And right about that time that I joined First Western, he was selling First Western. And so it was a great transition time to go to work for Bob Carlson and Claude Rich at Texas Title. So, and it was something that they were looking forward to a disruption in the marketplace.
And then when you went to work for Texas Title, you went right into the educational piece, is that correct?
Yes,
So that then, as part of your entry into Texas Title, you're now the director for Texas Title University. So that's that educational piece that you're talking about, right? Tell me a little bit about that.
So we'll go backwards for a second. When I was a real estate agent in Lubbock, there were 6 title companies. Okay. So
in Lubbock?
In Lubbock.
Okay.
And so I ended up closing. My closer became my closer because he helped me with my first deal, right? He knew I was a new agent. He kind of held my hand. He stitched a deal together for me that was really falling apart at the end. And he built my loyalty because he showed that he invested his time in me, and that his end result was the same end result as mine was, is I wanted a commission check in my bank account, right?
Right.
So Greg Niola was my closer. Still, if I ever went back to Lubbock and sold real estate, he'd be my closer there too. In fact, when I go to Texas Tech games, his tailgate's the first place I go.
There you go.
Right?
There you go.
But through that experience, I learned that loyalty was important in this business, and it's not a huge character that people carry around. Loyalty is not something that's common in this industry. But I was loyal to him because he invested time in me. He educated me on this situation, on the education part of real estate. So there wasn't this thing called business development in Lubbock because there was only 6 title companies. And so I moved to Fort Worth, and all of a sudden these title reps, these marketing reps are flooding my office because they want time. They want to get on my calendar. They want time with my new agents. And it was lunch here, happy hour here, blah, blah. And I had never experienced that before, right? I had been successful as an agent without all of this. So I was just blown away by the amount of, kind of like false catering, false help that you were getting from these marketing reps. And so I tell people all the time, the reason that I really wanted to do the education piece is because we're not here to help your belly line. We're here to help your bottom line. And so that's kind of like that was the foundation of what are we going to do different and how is it going to look? And so that's what we came up with, was the education piece. If I can spend time cultivating a platform, working with people like you, bringing in knowledge and training and something unique that's going to help that person either A, in life or business, then I've helped their bottom line. And I've built, hopefully, like Greg did for me, I've built loyalty.
Well, that's a great point. And one of the things that we talk about at Main Street Pilot is that all of the tools that we talk about, whether we're talking to somebody in a school or we're talking to a corporation to help them have a common language that can be used throughout the entire corporation, so the leadership now can communicate with all the employees. That transitions not just with what they do at work or what they do if it's a student at school. We all operate in 3 different spheres: your work sphere, your personal sphere, and your social sphere.
Right.
And if you establish a bad behavior and you have that very high level insincerity that you have going forward, and that's how people see you, that's going to carry over not just in your work life, but in all of the other lives. Or if you're asked to lie or do something unethical, that becomes the slippery slope. It becomes that bad behavior, and you start using it in all 3. So that's very, very eye-opening, not eye-opening. I'm not surprised after having some time talking to you and learning a little bit about Texas Title and Texas Title University that's the philosophy that you guys use. That you're developing the whole person and not just making everybody that comes into your university necessarily a better realtor or a better closer at a title company. You're working on the whole person, which is awesome. Is awesome. So, you and I met. I was very fortunate to come and speak to at one of your breakfasts at Texas Title University about how we talk to and how we deal with millennials, the younger millennials and the Generation Z. Talked about how they're totally different than people my age, people your age. What is important to them, how we communicate with them is totally different. What were your thoughts on that? Because we had a great conversation coming in, and you really hit a big piece about that it's not just one-sided, it's actually both sides. So what were your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the material was great, and I can always gauge when the audience appreciates it, too, by the questions and the conversation. I think you had finished your presentation, and it went on for another 15 minutes because everyone started chiming in and asking questions and then kind of sharing their experiences. And so those are always how I know that was a hit. We did a good job. We brought in something that was of value. And so it started a conversation out after you left, and then with a couple other people that are kind of focusing on this same thing of, you know, working with millennials. How do you work with millennials? How do you work with millennials? And we kind of were like, well, but how do millennials work with us too, right? So we're you know, adapting and we're implementing these new programs. Like I have a friend who works for a large company in Fort Worth, and now they have these kind of like bucket fill things, and so now you have to like give stars to people to make them feel appreciated. And it's interesting. So we're accommodating millennials, but at the same time, we're still here working. So how are they learning? How are they adapting to the systems that we've been working with for years, right? So it's a two-way street. It can't be we're going to learn everything that we need to do to make you completely happy. Like this has to be a learn and learn.
No, absolutely. And that's what we talked about right before we came in here, that it is important for people my age and people that didn't learn and don't assimilate the same way that millennials and Generation Z, we need to know how they go about doing things, because you and I were talking, they learn differently than you and I did. Everything's done in micro-learning. It's all done in YouTube bites. It's all done in podcasts. That's how my 15-year-old does not watch television. Everything is done on a computer, on a laptop, on her iPad, or on her phone. So that is how they learn, but they're also some of the smartest people because they have access to so much information. But what is missing are the personal skills that we talked about so that they can understand how to interact with their bosses, with other employees, with clients. So it is a two-way street, and that's why the programs have to be not just to educate people like realtors or title or leaders in companies on how to communicate to millennials, but we have to have the programs for the millennials and the Generation Z so that they understand what is expected of them. So it's that combination. They need to understand responsibility. They need to understand how to do conflict resolution, how to solve problems, how to negotiate, how to think critically. All of these are key things. It's interesting, and I take the statistic that I'm about to tell you, and I carry it across most of Generation Z millennials, and really with what's going on out there today is the Gettner Institute says that 81% of kids in high school are bullied. That's a huge number.
Wow.
It was a lot less than that when I went to school, but I will tell you that I don't believe that number truly is 81%. There is a higher number of people that are bullied today, and when people are bullied today, it's totally different than when you and I went to school, when there wasn't social media. If bullying took place, 5 or 10 people knew about it. Sometimes it was taken care of one-on-one. Sometimes a teacher got involved, but the whole school didn't know about it. The whole community didn't know about it. So that is a big difference today. But I think what's happening is, in that 81% that's rolled up, is that there's a lot of young people that think they're being bullied because somebody said something that they didn't like. So it's transitioning into that. So that goes back to your point about why we can't just educate older men and women about how to communicate with Generation Z and how they do their business and how they go about things. But we've got to work on giving these skills back to these young men and women, because if we don't do that, we're going to have to spend all of our time trying to train them, or, to your point, being forced to coddle to potentially what they need or they want, and we're not going to have a workforce that is going to allow us to stay successful in companies or in our country. So that's why this is great conversation. I always get so passionate about it.
I want to know what those other 19% are doing, right? Like, who are they? And we need to be talking to them.
Absolutely.
They seem a little thick-skinned and leadership material. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's actually a valid point.
Yeah. No, I think that it's a downhill spiral if you don't. So we talked about this in my class, or in your class at the breakfast group. You know, they like to make their own decisions, yet they search for the advice, right? So what are we going to do when there's no one to give them advice anymore? Or we've all been muted and silenced and told, oh, well, that's not how we do it, so be sensitive to them. Well, then we're not really being authentic, and we're not giving them good advice. So they have to learn that not everything that comes out of someone's mouth is going to be with a participation ribbon attached to it. And I hate that they get that label too, right? That they always have a participation ribbon, because I know so many millennials that I think my favorite quality of a millennial is their need to make a difference, right? They live with purpose. That's super awesome. That's a great way to live a life. But they also need those personal skills too. So, I mean, it's just kind of it's like a dog chasing its tail. It's like, which do you fix first, right?
Well, and we've transitioned from leaders and managers to tell somebody what to do. Now, not only do you have to give them the guidance of what you want accomplished, you have to establish the curbs, if you will, for them to stay within, but then you have to be an advocate, and you have to guide them, not tell them. You have to guide them to get to where they need to be, but you also have to have a little bit of a backbone and make sure that they understand that they have to be responsible. Make sure that they understand that I'm not going to tell you everything. You've got to do some critical thinking. You've got to solve some problems, and if you don't have those skills, we're going to give you some tools to get there. But if you can't get there, then we're going to have to take a look at whether you're going to be productive in our company.
Right.
And ideally, we introduce these skills early enough now and get them out there that we can reinstitute the learning of these skills, so when they're coming out of college or coming out of a tech school or getting that first job, they're not having to learn it then. They've already got these skills, that is the romantic vision that I have with what Main Street Pilot's trying to do. So one of the things that we discussed was how traditional training sometimes, especially when you're talking to the millennials and Generation Z, may not always work, because they have some of these bad behaviors, or they've established these behaviors because they're on their phone all the time, and a number of other things. So the change is to take a lot of these key things that they need to learn: ethics, the law, how to interact with clients, how to interact with people in the title company, how to do all these different things. Establishing all of that knowledge now, instead of it being a traditional course, take it out over the course of the year so you're establishing a good behavior. I like to talk about leadership, personal skills, decision making. All of these skills are perishable skills. If you don't work on them, it's not going to do any good. Right. You know, you can't just read a book and then expect that all that knowledge transferred and I'm going to use it every single day. So, and that's kind of the focus that Main Street Pilot has. We talked about that, and I think you kind of had some thoughts on that.
About continuing this conversation, I think it's great. I think that you've hit on a good topic that isn't taught a lot, especially in real estate, right? They go to take their pre-licensing. It consists of contracts, and it consists of, marketing, and but they're missing that personal growth component. And so this would be that personal growth component in micro doses, right? The quick podcast, and I think it's a huge opportunity that can be seized, especially right now, because technology is taking away so much of the personal part of real estate, right? Like there's companies out there that are trying to create a situation where a real estate agent is not needed at all, right? So, and they'll be able to succeed in that if all the realtors are essentially just robots and zombies anyway. So we have to protect that. And that comes with, how do you handle conflict resolution? When you're knee deep in a negotiation with a contract, you can't get emotional, right? Like you have to be thinking of your party that you're representing at the time, and your emotions or your sensitivity can't come into play at that time. And and I mean, gosh, that was hard for me to learn and master. I can't imagine if I had been any more sensitive than I was already, you know? So I think that the personal skills is absolutely, it has to come into play, or else real estate agents will expire.
Yeah, 85% of success is based on that. That's a statistics that is out there. The other interesting thing that I'm very successful when I talk to leaders in corporations about is many of them have already established how they do their mentoring, and they have good programs to do that. But it doesn't filter down to all of the employees. And when I coach leaders in companies, I talk to them about how to make sure that that message is consistent, and how on a regular basis you're talking to your first and second line leaders, and then making sure that they're doing the same thing. One of the very powerful parts of having a continuous program that has at least one micro-learning opportunity every single week is you give all those leaders an opportunity to have a topic to talk to all their people about every single week. So it focuses them to talk about ethics, or it focuses them to talk about the law, or how to deal with negotiations. See the interaction that they have with the folks that are part of their team, and help them all grow. I had some great advice the first time I commanded in the Air Force, and that was to make sure that you didn't, at a staff meeting every week, just tell people what they were supposed to do. The big portion and the responsibility of the commander in that meeting was to mentor the people that work for them, and then ensure that they mentor their people. And when I first started doing it, it was difficult to try to think about, okay, what am I going to do? What's this process going to be? And that's why the micro-learning that's part of the programs that we have is so powerful, because it gives the leader an opportunity in that avenue to continue that. So very, very excited about the opportunity to have continued conversations. So tell us, how can people find out about Texas Title and Texas Title University, and how you guys can help them?
Well, you can find us, you can go to texastitle.com /university. Or we have Texas Title DFW on Facebook. And so on our website, you can find out what classes we're offering in what location. And then also on the Facebook, or you can email me, which is cponder@texastitle.com, and I can add you to our email list. That way they're up to speed with what we're doing. And then, of course, we have our Tuesday morning speaker series, which is what you were a part of, and that takes place in our Fort Worth office. And that was more of a we wanted to bring the community into our office, something of value, something that when the real estate agent left, they were a better person for having attended, right? So one example would be your presentation. So you talked about working with or establishing a relationship with millennials. And then we have a gentleman from the North Texas Transportation Committee coming, and he's going to talk about Mobility 2045. And so they've put together a plan for our public transportation up till 2045, because we're growing, right? So we're always trying to figure out like ways to bring the community into our office so that the real estate agent could go out with one more tool in their toolbox when they meet with their clients. Like, hey, I met this gentleman and he told me all about millennials, and I met this guy and he told me all about transportation. And so now they're better off knowing than before they arrived. So yeah, that's how they can reach us.
Well, that's awesome. And I just want to close by saying that Texas Title started with one office, and now you have 7. You're throughout the entire Metroplex. And I think what we've been able to let people know today is that Texas Title is not just an organization that wants to close houses. You're out there to help the entire process. You want to make the people that work at Texas Title, that all the realtors that you come in contact with, the best that they can be, so that the end user, the person buying or selling the house, gets the best representation that they can. Right. And that's what your focus is. It's that bottom line. It's taking care of the total picture. And I was very excited and very it was awesome to see that that's what you guys are doing at Texas Title. And I just want to thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you.
And everyone, thank you for listening to Camee today. She did an amazing job. We learned a lot about Texas Title, but about education and how important it is in the real estate environment. I'm Brian Searcy, your host of What If You Could, and I will see you 2 weeks from today. Thank you very much.